Get your win at WallaceWins.com.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wallace Wins Podcast. We are in studio today. I'm very excited to introduce special guest BJ Abron, a trial attorney and partner and founder and owner of Abron Law, focusing his trial practice on personal injury and wrongful death cases. Welcome, BJ.
Yes, thank you, Brad. I appreciate you having me on.
It's twice in 2 days for us. I saw you yesterday at Calabasas Country Club for the Los Angeles Trial Lawyers Charities annual golf tournament. Thanks for coming out.
Yes, you saw me shanking a couple of shots here and there.
I won't talk about that part of it. Your swing looked good, man.
It looked good on tape.
Yeah, but we are happy to have you in studio. And as we do with all our guests, we're going to start out with a little segment called Rapid Fire. You ready for Rapid Fire?
Let's go.
All right, I'm going to throw out a bunch of topics, and the idea is just give me your most rapid, quick, off-the-top response. You ready?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Coolest place you've ever been?
Ibiza.
Best sport to watch?
Football, no question.
Best sport to play?
Football, no question.
Movie you've seen more than any other?
Paid in full.
Hardest class in law school?
Con law.
First band you saw live?
I mean, the first concert that stands out is Kanye.
All right, how about best city you've ever lived in?
Compton.
Most famous person you've ever met?
I have to say Magic Johnson.
Best month of the year?
October.
Favorite sports team?
Lakers, Dodgers, Rams.
All right, we finally got a guest that knows what's up. Childhood hero?
Kobe was not necessarily my childhood, but it was the back end of it, so I have to go with Kobe.
Hidden talent most people don't know you have?
Sing. That's not true. Not true at all. That's the talent I wish I had, actually. But I think I'm a pretty good actor.
Coming soon to a theater near you, folks. All right, so we're here with BJ. BJ, you've been practicing law for what now, a little over 8 years?
Yep, sounds about right. 2015.
You've had experience working in several prominent plaintiff personal injury firms, been involved in numerous seven-figure verdicts and settlements throughout your career. You now own and operate your own law firm,
Yes.
Abron Law. So let's just start out with some of the basics. How long have you been out on your own doing your own thing?
Yeah, I started my practice in October, really end of October, beginning of November 2019. So wasn't the best timing because the pandemic was right around the corner. Of course, we didn't know that at the time, especially with my business model. I had some referral sources. I get about 90% of my cases from other attorneys who mostly do personal injury, but just don't litigate cases or just don't try cases. And so, of course, when the courts were on pause, the great pause, we weren't trying cases. And so my phone wasn't ringing like I kind of expected it to ring when I initially launched my firm. But I did have some cases that I had come in, resolve cases, stayed afloat until we were able to kind of get back in the ring and start going to battle for our clients. And I've been blessed to have some great verdicts since then, since we've been back in trial in 2021, really. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, the timing of things in life, you know, they say man plans and God laughs, you know. I've been through some things myself where you just kind of have to laugh at it.
That's it.
And figure out a way through it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to persist. You have to keep going. So, I mean, that's really my motto is, you know, some things you can get boggled down with, but, you know, trying to just focus in on the things that you can control is really my motto. I try and brush off as much as I can. Some stuff sticks with you, of course, but you got to keep going.
Right. And so walk us through, you know, going back now pre-pandemic, end of 2019, you've been at it for, you know, 5+ years. You'd learned from a lot of other folks who'd been in the game a little longer, gotten really good experience early on in your career. You were always kind of pushing yourself and out there. But what went in for you to making the decision to finally, you know, what we call hang your own shingle?
Yeah. You know, the concept actually came to me through a dentist that I had at the time, and I forget his name because it was a one-time visit, but we had a great connection. And I was in a process of transferring from my first firm to the second firm. He was a proponent of starting your own business. His wife was a lawyer. And we were talking, about what it would take to get there. And he was saying you should just pick a number of firms that you would work for. And if you haven't figured out a firm that you feel like is a great place for you, that you want to stay, then just go out and do it. And that's actually what I did. And for me, that number was 3. I had started off my career working for a prominent defense firm, Mike Schoenbuck's office,
Sure.
who most people know I speak very highly of Mike Schoenbuck. I call him kind of like my father-in-law because he's my father in the law. He helped bring me up and has a lot to do with the way I practice. But when I was transferring from the defense side to the plaintiff side, I had 2 firms left. So I worked for 2 prominent firms. And at that last firm, I had made a decision that it was time. I'm going to stay true to the goals that I set, the standards that I set. And so it was time to just go out and do it. I didn't have a tremendous amount of money at the time, but it was something I said I was going to do. And I was blessed to have spoken to him to kind of set that up. And it just happened, it happened.
So when you say, kind of stay true to yourself, true to your word, do what you had set out, was that something early on when you first started out in the practice that you had kind of, carved out as a personal goal for yourself that, hey, I'm going to work for some other folks. I'm going to learn the game. I'm going to have some mentors, but eventually I want to do my own thing. Was that from the outset what you were thinking?
No, it really wasn't. Honestly, when I went to law school, I didn't know anything about personal injury. I didn't know anything about trying cases. I had never stepped foot into a civil litigation law firm, actually, until I got hired by Mike Schoenbuck when I interviewed with him. So it wasn't something that was planned out. In fact, my background was in entertainment or fashion and some tech. And so I really planned on working. I worked for BET and Viacom in law school, and so I thought I was going to go that route. I had tried out for our honors program at Southwestern Law School, and I made the team, and that's when I fell in love with trying cases. And so that's how I ended up at Mike Schoenbuck's office. I wasn't a part of the ABOTA program because I graduated in an offset. I graduated in December instead of, I graduated a semester early.
Right.
But I was able to connect with Mike Schoenbuck, got an interview, and he blessed me and hired me. And it kind of like started the road there for me going out and doing my own thing. But it was really more so me trying to focus in and figure out ways to try cases. That's what my focal point was. It really wasn't hanging my shingle or opening my own practice. I just wanted to do what I actually finally fell in love with and the practice of law, which is just trying cases. It just happened that way.
Right.
That was just kind of my roadmap.
It's interesting. Mike's a good friend of mine as well and was one of my ABOTA sponsors when I joined ABOTA, 6 or 7 years ago, and we remain really close. I joke to people, like, before I became involved with ABOTA, I really didn't socialize or have any friends with anyone on the defense side at all. I kind of villainized the whole thing. And then, through meeting people like Mike and others through ABOTA, realized that, they're
real people.
They're human beings too, and they have feelings and families and
right.
All sorts of stuff. But no, it's good to have relationships on both sides, and
for sure,
and have that that professional connection. And even though there's so many lawyers out there, when you talk about kind of the community of trial attorneys and civil litigation and tort law and things, what we do, it is a pretty small circle of people, and your reputation is everything. It's everything.
It's everything. And that was one thing that I learned some early lessons from Mike. But that was one of the things that, and I recognize that. I went to law school later than most, I think. I had worked in fashion for a second. I worked in marketing and branding. I worked for the city for a bit, doing some IT work, and worked for in entertainment. And then I decided to actually pursue law. So I started law school, I think, when I was 27. So it wasn't, fresh out of undergrad.
Right.
So I kind of knew how to navigate corporate structures and understand the things that are really most important, which one of those things being your name is everything,
right.
Pretty much how I grew up anyway. But he fastened that up for sure with some of the stuff that we were dealing with plaintiff's counsel at the time. And they would say some crazy stuff and I'd be ready to rip them a new one. And he's like, dude, you haven't tried any cases yet. You can't say that to him,
Don't be a paper tiger.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. I was ready to get at it. I'm a young gun, ready to go. But it's like, hey, you gotta understand who these people are and make sure that your reputation is, precedes you. So,
right, yeah, definitely, and those are good lessons to learn, especially early in your career. So now, tracking with your firm, since you've taken off with everything in the last couple of years. 2-part question: talk about some of your biggest challenges that you've faced going out on your own and doing your own thing. And then also, what are some of the bigger triumphs that you've had thus far?
Yeah. It's a 2-part question, but it's almost like one and the same, really, because the challenges are making sure that other attorneys trust you, to give you their cases. And that's not something that's easy. Some of these people spend a lot of time with these clients, getting a client and then managing their treatment and all that kind of stuff, managing their expectations. And then they get to a point where they understand they do need to bring somebody else in. And you being trusted enough, especially as a younger attorney, that's not something that's easy to come by. Like they say, trust is built. And it's built through the reputation in our legal community. So that's definitely the biggest struggle or hurdle that I should say that I had. But it was something that I understood, and it was something that I understood from the moment that I started practicing and building those rapports and relationships.
Right.
So I was able to triumph in those areas and build rapports and relationships and gather a significant amount of cases from different referral sources. And so, that's the same struggle that we deal with. We go to Cali, of course, it's a good time, but for me, it's like, hey, I'm just like any other vendor there. My business that I get is from other attorneys. So I'm trying to get more business from other attorneys. And it's it's just a steady hill to climb. Because the growth, you want to get better and better cases,
Right.
So I'm not going to get those cases that you get, I'm not going to get those cases that Gary gets, or the various attorneys who've been prominent for a long time. So for me, I find those cases that don't have a glass ceiling, the upside is high. Most of the time, it's a lot of hurdles to get over in the cases. I figure out which ones I think I can get over, and then I attack it. I get over at trial, and I'm able to get 7-figure verdict. So it's tricky. I spend a lot of time going through cases and files, but I've been blessed to be able to build that relationship with the legal community to get over that hurdle.
Definitely. Yeah. It's inspiring stuff, and I think that your approach is exactly spot on with the way you're going about it. And, you talk about Gary, who's, at the top of the heap. He's one of the goats
Yes.
of our industry and a legal titan. And, even someone like Gary, I think back to early in my career when he was already established, he was taking cases that now, you and I are taking, and he's
passing
on those. So that's just the nature of the business. And I think it evolves over time. And to your point, the more you build up that trust and rapport with your referring attorneys and, the people that trust you with their cases. But you make a good point earlier when you talk about not only, sort of the experience and age factor, but also, when some of these attorneys are referring you their cases, they were on the phone with that client day one. They remember when they signed the client up, and, they've had the case for 2-3+ years, and there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that has gone in on their end. And they feel, really connected to the case and the client. And there's a there's a big, not only trust factor, but, it's like, it's a big responsibility as the attorney that's coming in to make sure that you're, kind of taking the handoff from them of their baby,
You can't fumble. You can't.
Right.
Yeah. It's so important. And each client, when I say client, each referral source or co-counsel is different. How they nurture the case is different. How they maintain it is different. The level of input they want to have is different. And involvement. Yeah, exactly. Some are like, hey, I want to sit at counsel table with you at trial. I haven't tried a case, but I'd love to get my feet wet and learn something. Some are like, call me when it's resolved. So. Right. And I mean, for me, either way, of course, I like to kind of just take it and do my own thing, but I don't mind if people want to be involved as well. And I mean, it's a good time. We have a blast, so.
Yeah. I mean, I did a presentation a few years back at the Western Trial Lawyers Association, early on in my practice about just the beauty of co-counseling.
Yes.
And especially when you're, newly out on your own or whatever the case may be, there's a lot of benefits, not only to the attorneys, but also to the clients. The clients are getting, quote unquote, two attorneys or two law firms for the price of one. And, I think there's plenty of cases to go around, and to be able to collaborate with different people, even outside your own firm, is oftentimes a way to really, accelerate your growth and your skill set.
Yeah. And, now one of the things that I've been doing too recently, I started doing this with Bobby Sadian and Wilshire Law and John Taylor specifically as the attorney trying the case. We hit for about $45 million. And this collaborative effort is not only just collabing and representing the same client, but when you have multiple clients on cases, I'll come in and I'll represent even the lower value client on the case. But when we go to trial, you have too many openings. You have two openings. You have to double everything. It's everything squared pretty much. Collaborative, co-counsel at the same time. But in the eyes of the court, you get double everything. And it's a different way of approaching things. And I think a lot of people should definitely consider that. I've done it in a number of cases now, and it helps. It helps a lot.
Yeah, so, that can be a very effective strategy.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
All right. We are going to transition now to another segment called Underrated, Overrated.
All right.
And this, if you've seen our podcast, is a section where I throw out various topics and you tell me whether they are underrated or overrated and a brief explanation why. All right, you ready?
Let's go.
SoCal weather.
Underrated. I mean, it's the best weather in the world. Where else can you go from the beach to the snow? Nowhere else in the world can you do that.
Listen to this man, people.
2 hours.
Talking to strangers on an elevator.
Definitely overrated. It can be the most awkward thing in the world. It can be great. Sometimes I just break the silence too, just because it's so awkward, but then you get that person who's just extremely weird, and it's like, all right, why did we start talking in the first place?
And why do I have to go to the 39th floor right now? All right, FaceTime calls.
Oh, goodness. So overrated. I can't stand them. The only FaceTime call I appreciate is when it's my mom or one of my nieces and nephews. Anybody else, please do not FaceTime me.
Zoos.
Zoos? Like animals?
Like going to the zoo.
Wow, that's funny because I haven't been to the zoo in many, many, many years. I remember the last time I went, I had this very weird looking tank top on. I was probably about 11 years old. I just see the picture in my head right now. The San Diego Zoo. I love the zoo. It's a little scary. Overrated.
Ranch dressing.
Can't stand it. So obviously overrated. People put it on everything, but
not a fan.
At all.
Fantasy football.
Oh, come on now. Underrated. I love it. Except for I got to take my cousin out. I just lost this. He just beat me this week. Deshaun Watson's not the same.
Is it like weekly weekly things or just
it
bragging rights?
This depends on who you're playing against. You know, he made a bet. He felt like he was going to win. I felt like he wasn't, and so I owe him a couple drinks.
All right, it's not too bad. Still, it's only week 2.
It's week 2, except for I'm 0-2.
Fireworks.
Can I go right in the middle?
You could try.
I would say it's underrated overseas, overrated here. It just goes. I mean, when 4th of July comes around, I'd love it for the day. I don't want it for the whole month.
Right.
You know, I love it when I'm out of town though.
Postmates.
Postmates is amazing. Completely underrated. It's one of the best inventions, I think, in the last 10, 15 years.
Totally agree. Sleeping more than 7 hours.
Underrated. I got to get my sleep. You know, I get it how I get it. It might not be straight. If I can't get it straight, I'll get a nap in. I'm a napper.
Me too.
I have to.
Me too. No doubt about it. And that has been underrated, overrated. Well done, BJ. All right. Well, continuing with our conversation, talked a little bit about your practice, talked about, you know, what you've been doing over the last couple of years since you started your firm and the success that you've had. Let's rewind a little bit. Sounds a little cliche, but just walk us briefly through. You mentioned a little bit of an unorthodox road to law school. You did some things in between, but what was the hook that actually got you interested to get a law degree, pass the bar, become an attorney?
It was really a progression. You know, it's hard for me to really say it was just a hook. Because, you know, my life was, it wasn't a traditional life, born and raised in Compton, California, and you know, seen everything that you see and hear about it on TV, you know, and shot at, all kind of crazy stuff. And just kind of growing through life, lost a lot of friends to jail, lost their lives. And so it was a number of things that kind of like set me on the path to where I am today, including a mentor who I had around right before law school, actually, Ivy McNeil Wyatt. Yep. And so I came in contact with Ricky, and at that point in my life, I'd already progressed to a point where I started to see what life is about, you know. And I was either going to go back, or I had my bachelor's in marketing and sociology, so I was either going to go back and get my MBA. I was working for the city of Los Angeles at the time as a communications technician, so it was also a chance that I was just going to go get my engineering degree, and I was on the lowest of the totem pole. And then I did have a thought already about going to law school, and he told me, he was like, look, everybody has an MBA these days, everybody. You know, it's almost becoming a new BA. And he had told me that, you know, if I consider going to law school, it's pretty much the same, you know, on the same scale as having an MBA, getting your JD. And if I ever want to practice, then I could take the bar and practice. And so I started to look into it more in depth at that time. And I made the decision at that point in time to actually go to law school. And so if there was a hook, I would say it was probably Ivy, who was the hook. It was a progression over many, many years to get there. And then that conversation was the one that really steered me to where we are. And it's kind of, yeah.
Shout out to Rodney Diggs, too.
Oh, I love Rodney. That's my guy.
Good friend of mine.
Yeah.
We did a wrongful death case together. We had separate clients, but it was a tragic case, and got a good result against the city of Victorville.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And Rodney was just recently honored, I think, top 100 lawyers daily journal.
Yep.
So Rodney's doing his thing, killing it. Shout out, Rodney.
Rodney's a badass. And Bob McNeil, too. Late, great, passed away. Ivy McNeil Wyatt. He was the one who helped me.
And Diggs now.
Yeah. And Purcell and Diggs now. Yeah. And, you know, but Bob also helped me get into law and into Southwestern. So, and shout out to the whole Ivy McNeil Wyatt, Purcell and Diggs firm.
Yeah, they're doing their thing. 80 years, I think I saw recently, which is just really impressive, and you know, a testament to their firm and everything that they do. All right, so it was kind of a progression. You were looking at your options. You had a lot of different things in front of you, and law school just kind of made made sense. And then I assume once you went through that process, then you're out, and then there's only one thing to do once you graduate law school.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's practice,
Yeah.
you know.
I got to take the bar.
Right. I dabbled. Yeah, I took the bar, and then I dabbled with. After passing the bar, I dabbled with some contract work first, because I was proficient in reading and going through agreements and negotiating contracts. And so I was doing some contract work while I was waiting for the right firm to start, and because I wanted a vertical climb. I didn't want to be shelved and be stuck with just doing discovery. By no means was I trying to avoid it. I wanted all of it, but I also wanted to be able to get in the ring. And
you want to learn it, but not get stuck doing it.
Yeah, forever. Exactly. I want to let's go.
Right.
So I mean, how it is trying to get out for trial. They all don't go. But Mike put me in a position where I almost got a chance to try a case against a very prominent plaintiff's attorney who I later worked for. And he just let me go. He let me rip. He let me, do what I do. And I had my first trial with Mike Schoenbuck. The irony of it was in Compton too. Born and raised in Compton. My first trial was in Compton with Judge Curry. We had a defense verdict. A lot of my buddies won't be proud of that now. But it's a great case that we tried with Mike and I. It was a really good experience.
And that was like your first taste of the courtroom?
First taste of the courtroom live. I mean, I tell everybody I actually learned how to try cases in law school because we would just go up and down the state, into mock trial competitions. Right. And I really did learn how to cross-examine people and direct examine people and do closing arguments and opening statements. We didn't deal with damages. It was just more liability and stuff like that, or criminal cases. But I learned how to try cases in law school. And that first trial I had with Mike's like, hey, you need an objection sheet. I'm like, dude, really? It's like, well, most associates, their first case, they want an objection sheet. I'm like, let's just go. Let's do it.
And in terms of trial practice, there really is no other class or experience in law school besides the moot court thing.
Yeah.
That really gives you that real world experience and that preparation. And
that's what was so good about Southwestern's program is because, we had the moot court and then we had the trial advocacy track where it was initially I was actually set for the moot court. I did well in my competition and I remember I was just talking to folks on the trial advocacy track and I switched over to do it and it landed me here. I fell in love. I don't see myself, wanting to argue appellate cases and in front of a panel judge and Supreme Court or anything like that. I like trying cases, So this was definitely panned out for me. And then of course once I got in there in my first trial, it was just those juices. You get those juices. You hate a lot about the prep, but you always get that thing. You talk about a hook. Every trial, I've never had a trial where I hadn't had some frustrations with prep. And it's just like, oh, why do I do this to myself every time? And you get that hook every time and you always come back.
Yeah, definitely.
Great feeling.
Well, let's talk about a little bit about outside the courtroom. What are some of your passions outside the courtroom, outside the practice that gives you that balance in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a family guy. I just my family is pretty close. And Dad has 8 brothers and sisters, so I got a bunch of cousins as well. Dad's side, mom's side. But we just like hanging out. We just actually took a trip to Turks and Caicos a couple months ago. 7 days, myself, the whole family. We went out there. Such a great time. And I mean, as long as I'm with my family, friends, love eating food, love going out to restaurants and, going out, just having a good time.
No better place than LA to be a foodie.
Come on now. Well, some people might disagree with that, but I love it. I love LA food.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right. Well, let me ask a different kind of retrospective question. What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
It's a good question. Advice I would give to my 18-year-old
Only the
self.
best questions here.
Only the best questions.
The hard-hitting questions.
The hard ones. You got to dig deep, is to believe. I mean, it's easy to look back and I could say, hey, this is my track. Get in there now, right? But just kind of looking back and really just telling myself, you're going to be okay, focus. You're doing the right thing, believe in yourself and just continue to do what you're doing. Because that was one thing where growing up where I grew up, especially around that time, it was not a lot of resources. There's a lot of people who have talent, but talent without resources and without in a lower socioeconomic climate, you get caught up in things. Just trying to make it to the very next day, and so having an understanding that what you're doing is correct, which is something that you get from a lot of resources, right? People being able to assure that what you're doing is the right path. Didn't really have that a whole lot, and of course, my parents, got me focused on certain things. But having people in that industry or having certain professionals in certain walks of life, or just wealthy people or just people who are doing well, be able to tell you that this is the way,
right?
That it's meaningful,
Because even sometimes you think about it like the right path. You talk about that. It's very incremental,
yeah,
and it's very long term.
Yes,
and it's like the old adage, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yep.
But that's really how. And sometimes, especially in the environment that we live in now, where it's like the social media, like instant gratification society, everybody wants like the quick, the quick, And so having that sort of 30,000 foot view perspective and people around you to kind of keep you on that track. So, you talk about, growing up in Compton, you talk about having friends that you lost, friends that had to, serve time and all those kinds of struggles. As you look back on your life and how far you've come, is there something that you personally attribute to say, I was able to kind of get through that and what you attribute that to?
God, circumstance. That's a good question too, because a lot of people always look. One of the things I don't like is that you're an example that everybody can make it. You hear that, especially coming from where I came from as an African American male.
Right.
People's like, you made it. See, you're proof that everybody can. But it's just like looking at Vegas. If everybody could win in Vegas, it wouldn't be Vegas, right? They would be broke. You still hear the slot machines winning every now and then. It doesn't mean that everybody can win.
You see people that you grew up with that were just as talented as
you.
way
more talented, way more smart, like bright-minded people who circumstances that they were in, it just didn't allow it,
They got caught up or whatever.
Yeah. And like I say, I mean, it's hard to, you can conceptualize the future, but it's hard to focus on it when you have to worry about tomorrow. You have to worry about today, right? And so a lot of people are derailed from a potential pathway because of the struggles of today that they have to get through that other people might not necessarily have to deal with. And so that's really the most important point for me. It's like there's other people who were just as talented or even more so who they didn't last long enough to get the opportunity that I had. I was blessed, and that's the reason why the first thing I say is God, because I was blessed to be around long enough for certain things to click. My parents had great parents. They instilled the things in me. But when I'm outside, we're running with the boys. We doing what we doing. We're getting caught. She's getting phone calls. Mom's up late. Where are you? She's worried. Something's happened. So I was no different than a lot of the kids that grew up in the area. I was just blessed to be around for certain things to click. The click, that came from my parents, though. So there was some things that were instilled in me. I just didn't see it until a certain time. But I was blessed to be around long enough for those things to actually hit. Yeah.
It's beautiful, man. And you should continue to be blessed.
Yes. More blessings.
We are going to do our final segment of the show called Get the W or Take the L.
Let's get the dub.
And I'm going to give you a couple of recent news stories that, you may or may not have seen, probably have not, because we had to dig deep for these. All right. A Belgian man went viral several months back after shocking guests by arriving at his own funeral in a helicopter, very much alive. TikToker David Berton from Belgium, 45 years old, called what he called a prank on his friends and family earlier several months back, faking his own death with the help of his wife and kids. His daughter even created a post on Facebook mourning her father, telling him to rest in peace and notifying people of her father's death. And then when they all showed up at his funeral, he crashed his own funeral, getting out of the helicopter.
Surprise.
And surprising everyone for the viral moment. So for faking his own death and pulling a prank on his friends and family to get social media views, does David Barton get the W or take the L?
He is taking the big L. That is malicious. I mean, goodness gracious. Like, who does that? And then to have the family, I just can't figure out how one of them didn't say this is a bad idea. I just don't understand that. How do you do that to people? I mean, what was the goal? What did he get out of it? And it's
Views.
against the law, isn't it?
Views.
Oh, it's views. Okay. Well, hey, some people say all press is good press, right? I guess that was that had to be the approach.
Hey, we're talking about
it, right? I guess it worked. Well, so maybe it is a W. I don't know. That's just horrible.
We'll give him the L.
He has to have the L.
All right. Last year, American rapper and singer Post Malone dropped $800,000 on a rare Black Lotus card signed by the artist who drew it, making it the most expensive Magic the Gathering card ever purchased until now, where it's been revealed that back in June, he paid $2 million for another Magic the Gathering one-of-a-kind card called the One Ring. According to the lore in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, the One Ring was forged into the fires of Mount Doom for the dreadful sorcerer Sauron. I'm probably not saying these names right because I never read Lord of the Rings or watched the movies. But the purchase price for the card was never publicly disclosed, but the gaming news site The Gamer reported that it received a $2 million bounty when it was released in the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth set in late June. So for dropping $800,000 on a Magic the Gathering card and $2 million on a rare Lord of the Rings card, does Post Malone get the W or take the L?
I mean, because I know nothing about what you're talking about, I want to say it's an L unless the value of the cards are higher. Then it's a big W, right? It's an investment at that point.
Yeah.
Is he playing cards? It's like if you're spending $2 million for some cards.
I don't think he's playing them. I think he gets them graded by PSA and they go in a case.
It's just memorabilia.
And it's like an investment to your point.
If the value is above it, it's a win. You know?
Shout out to Post Malone.
He must see something that I just don't know. I may need to start watching some of these movies.
Listen, there's some valuable stuff out there for the nerds, you know? I mean, I never got into it, but if it makes money, it makes sense, right?
Probably does. I suspect it does. If he spent $2 million, he already did it. He started with $800,000, right? And then he spent $2 million on another one. So he must see something there.
Right. He must have earned a little bit of profit on that first one.
Assuming that there's some profit there, I'm going to give him a dub.
Post Malone, you get the W from BJ. Shout out.
Let's go.
Well, this concludes our podcast, BJ. It was a pleasure having you in studio.
Yes.
And congrats on all your success, and looking forward to seeing only good things that come for you in the future.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on, Brad.
Thank you, my man.
It's been a pleasure. I've always, just kind of watched the podcast and like, man, this is really, really, really well done. So it's been an honor and a pleasure to sit right here next to this Bones glove too.
Shout out to John Bones Jones.
Man.
Pound for pound, number one.
Number one.
All right, this concludes our podcast. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there, everybody. Thank you.
Get your win at WallaceWins.com.